All right, so I'm sitting here with Sergio Ingstrom. He's with 3C Consulting Company. What caught my eye is Multiverse Capital. They have venture investment for the cannabis industry. So always interested to kind of know your personal take on the cannabis industry. You are here at the International Cannabis Business Conference in Vancouver, BC. And so want to know about your company, about you, what you do, and your take on capital in the cannabis industry for 2019.
Sounds good. Hi, I'm Sergio Ingstrom. 3C Consulting started about 10 years ago in 2006 in Colorado with the first medical market. We do everything from greenhouse and facility design to financial models to license applications. As such, we started out with a lot of groups in different markets, specifically in the US and then internationally, where we helped them get a license and start out their business. So we took an equity stake as a consulting firm in their business and started raising capital for them. And as such, we launched Multiverse Capital, our venture capital fund, to help fund a lot of those businesses that we worked as a consulting firm. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Our take is short and simple in terms of how we invest. We invest in places where it's going to be low cost of production, where export is available to Northern European countries specifically. Germany is kind of the crown jewel, so being able to get low cost of production in a facility that's still approved by German standards, where you can get your product into Germany, which is probably ideal for most companies at this moment. So
Why? 70 million people?
It's just because it has the highest standard right now for the medical market. So it's essentially, if you get into Europe, you're going to get into the rest of the European Union. So going through that barrier is very difficult, and a lot of people are trying to do it. And a lot of people are setting up cultivation centers or extraction centers as well, based on locations that are now open for licensing, but also have low cost of production. So I'm talking about Colombia, Lesotho, South Africa, possibly Thailand now that they have a new medical program. Mexico's coming online. So these are players that are going to come in and inundate the market with cheap weed, as you will. Whether or not that cheap weed is accepted by the pharmaceutical industries in Europe is another question. So everyone's trying to get it that way. Not a lot of success on exports from certain countries. You'll see press releases from certain groups that do it, like there was one successful shipment of CBD oil from Colombia to the UK recently. I believe the name is called Cleverleaf, actually. Cleverleaf, yes. So they're one of the companies to look out for. That's like kind of ahead of the game. They're really good structure of how they're going about business, and they're also partnering with someone in Portugal where they're trying to get some of the growing to happen as well. So it's interesting to see Portugal as a country where growing is going to happen and eventually expand to the rest of the European Union, the products that are made there, because low cost of production in the European Union already, and very good weather for growing cannabis. So that's the take on it.
So I want to ask you about the investment vehicle movers, but before I get into that, I want to ask you just a follow-up question about global cannabis. As you mentioned, a lot of different countries. We've seen that Puerto Rico for U.S. sales is going to be incredibly advantageous. California is the fifth largest GDP in the world. It's the U.S. followed by, I believe, Germany, Japan and China, and then California. So I'm wondering, with Puerto Rico, the advantages of doing business there for a U.S.-based company are huge, being that you have 4% corporate tax cap, 50% tax credits, and 100% tax deductions. I'm wondering if you have seen people at least eye that in the U.S. as, Bob from Incredibles is looking at going down there. There's other folks like Dab Stars is looking at it, and other nutrient companies, Dutch Master Nutrients, Craig Grimble, it was just there. Are you seeing anybody trying to take advantage of that with margins? And like CBD, I would imagine companies won't survive without that advantage. Is anybody else, looking at tax advantages in Puerto Rico?
Yes, a lot of people were looking at Puerto Rico. I think there's problems with the infrastructure. The way the program is shaped is also a bit strange. The fact that you're in an island and you would have to cross international waters to get product to the U.S. is also an issue. And we just got to think about weather here, tropical climate and hurricanes. So that's not necessarily very good for agricultural products, as we've seen with other ones that come out of the island. I will say that in terms of U.S. territories, our firm is specifically targeting Guam. It's a South Pacific island owned by the U.S., not a state, but a territory. Both medical and recreational legal there. Small local population of about 150K people, but highest consumption rate in the world for cannabis. Also receives about 1 million tourists from Japan, 500,000 from South Korea every year, where recreational or medical cannabis is far from ever happening in the next decade there. So target would really be kind of those East Asian tourists that come on Guam and would get access and education on cannabis on the island. So we've been working a lot there with the governor's office. We really see that as a potential play for entering the Asian market, which is huge, as you mentioned. Japan, South Korea, very rich countries with aging population. As we've seen in the California market, biggest market share is baby boomers and older people that are getting into these products, need it for pain relief. So it's similar population. I think that's going to be a major play. You see a lot of these companies that were in Europe expanding now into Asia, either via China or Thailand as a play. So I think that's going to be a big factor. Back to the Caribbean side, I think there's a lot of interest in the Jamaica program as well, just because of they're trying to establish a new pharmaceutical industry there. So we'll see which Caribbean players actually end up being able to export elsewhere. But it's going to be a very, very long process for sure.
My dollar is on Puerto Rico just because of the advantages there. If you have a bilingual call center or research and development, I definitely wouldn't advise growing in any Caribbean country, even Jamaica. I think that's an absolute ridiculous play. That is my opinion. Everyone's going there because of Bob Marley, but I think 98% will fail. My opinion, of course. And so with the top investment vehicles, it's going internationally. We have a lot of U.S. companies going to Canada, collecting that IPO, RTO money, coming back to the States, bypassing 280E in some cases with hemp products, with the eventuality of utilizing that for THC. But the investment vehicles themselves are like MSOs, the multi-state operators. You have technology with a subset of accurate dosing and data, and followed by another real estate investment trust play, which is marijuana lounges or cannabis cafes. Where are you seeing capital moves? You're based out of Denver?
Yeah,
you're in Canada right now. We are in Canada right now. Where are you seeing the money moving?
Great question. So the way that our investment vehicles are structured is we have medical, adult use, and ancillary. So ancillary would be your real estate, your tech companies, anything that doesn't touch the plant. Medical is obviously for medical cannabis, and adult is for adult use cannabis. What we're seeing a lot in terms of U.S. capital is in the real estate and ancillary products. Everyone's still too afraid, especially institutional capital, to get into actual operation companies. So that's been difficult. Capital raising for operational companies in the U.S. is extremely difficult because you pretty much have to go for private equity. And it's been hard for U.S. companies to scale outside of just being MSOs and being real international players. Whereas when you have the Canadian LPs, they're easily able to list in the stock index in Toronto, raise a bunch of capital, and start jumping on these new markets around the world. Right now, big hot market is Portugal because of reasons I mentioned. So we have Tilray that's already there. We're there as a company. We're the only American company there. Canopy Rivers, I think, bought someone called Gaia in Portugal that is going through the licensing process there. You have other Canadian LPs that are trying to establish a foothold in Europe through Portugal as their cultivation centers. So it's been very detrimental in the federal legalization of cannabis in the U.S. has been detrimental for capital raising and for actually building international cannabis companies around the world. You'll see other funds, like for example, Northern Swan, which is U.S. based, they're based out of New York. They don't touch anything in the U.S. They only invest in international projects. They're the ones that own Cleverleaf in Colombia, that export it to the UK. They're also doing a play in Portugal as well. So the smart U.S. players I've seen are focused on outside of the U.S. market. The reason for that is that Europe is looking at this as a pharmaceutical industry. So you got Switzerland and Israel that have all this medical research. You know, we're looking for IP, we're looking for pharmaceuticals that will be developed. That's where their money is long term. Short term, we get these like adult use, social consumption lounges or whatever that's going on in the U.S. But that's always going to make money, but that's going to be like running a liquor store. The real money is going to be discovering these new drugs that you'll be prescribing to. This plant has not been researched enough, and so a lot of it is up for grabs.
Absolutely. We talk about CBD, and that's one of 480 known cannabinoids, so a lot to research and look at. So for other people that are enjoying what you have to say and would like some help, how can they get a hold of you so they can throw you some money? I see that it's 3C Cannabis. That's the number 3. C is in cannabis. 3ccannabis.com. How else can they get a hold of you guys on social media?
We are on social media. It's 3C Cannabis as well. So if you Google us, you'll be able to find out about us. Our CEO, Nick Easley, has a lot of videos of him talking on YouTube. So you'll be able to find him there. He just spoke actually at 12:30 earlier today.
That was a good panel. We'll also be posting that as well, so stay tuned. Sergio, I appreciate it. That's the Talking Hedge. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Or don't, and I'm out.
Thanks so much.
Appreciate it.
Everyone.